Well, we're pressing on these small details here. I've got to go through here, and I've pretty much done this one already. All of these little tiny marks and stuff here in the corners, that's all got to be fixed. Really the only way to do it is do one little small panel at a time. I've cleaned the corners up here by hand with 80 grit. I'm going to take a DA now and kind of flatten this off. It's mostly just getting the little tiny stuff out. This needs quite a bit of work up in here. You just have to get all the corners and stuff I can't get a machine into by hand, and a little piece of paper there. You can see I got a 2 by 3 inch block. That's what I'm using, and I'll get this as best I can, and then we got another coat of primer on it. The door is pretty much done. Anyway, we'll press on. By the way, I got my I was thinking about putting big tail lights on here. You know, something like a 65 Mustang or something huge. I like big tail lights and brake lights. But I picked these up from eBay. They weren't too bad, 50 bucks. They're flush mount, and they're 4 inches. The lens is 4 inches. So I think this is going to look pretty good on here. Kind of a long ways away from wiring it, but just thought I'd show you them for now. Well, it's almost ready for primer. I cleaned up all of the gaps in here. Looks like I got a little right there. This takes forever. We're just trying to get little bitty tiny stuff and get it sanded down with 80 grit, which is what I've done, and I've DA sanded. I got this hood on this side. This has had all the corners cleaned as much as I can get them. You gotta call it quits somewhere. I have some little stuff like this. I could fill it with that glazing putty, but that stuff's pretty aggressive. You have to mix up quite a bit just for a little tiny thing. I use when I get ready for the final, I use red spot putty. It fills a small area. You don't wind up putting a whole bunch on. I gotta do this door, but basically this hood is done. I just have to DA this over here with 80 grit. That'll knock all that out. I've spent at least a couple hours on this. To me, it looks real good out here. I pretty much did this door too, but it looks good, and you can see the difference here where I haven't gone over it. This 80 grit has taken about half of the primer off. A few places you can see I went right through into the bondo, but it'll take a lot less this time. I don't have to really build it up or anything. But anyway, this front part is pretty much done. These things are really tough. You know, I've probably got 20-30 curves in there, and a lot of little corners where they go around the hinges, and I'm going to have to fill this one up a little more, but I'll wait till after the primer's on. Takes a long time to get this little stuff sorted out. About sanded the end of my finger off. So anyway, I'll press on with this, and we'll move over to the other door over there and clean it up. Here's a product that works good for what it is. Glazing and spot putty. You just put it in all your little pinholes, and dries up. You can sand it out. The problem is that this stuff, when it evaporates, it shrinks. So if you're trying to fill anything very big at all, after it dries, you're going to have a little dent, and it takes a long time to dry. But for what I'm doing right now, I've got this sanded in 80 grit, and I've got some little places like right in here. I got a pinhole, quite a few of them. I've got some right here in the corner. I got a little tiny bit right there. A little bit of stuff there, just little stuff. So I'm gonna put some of this on here. You just put it on with a body filler spreader, and try to put it real thin. It's hot out here today, so it'll dry pretty fast. I'll make sure you blow all your dust and everything off of it real good, and fill your pinholes. So that's what I've done, or what I'm gonna do. This side is pretty much sanded. This hood is sanded. That side over there is sanded. And I'm just gonna spot putty up all of the holes in here, and then I'll go back to 80 grit sanding on that side while this stuff dries. I'll bring you back when I got some on. Well, here's the result of that. I knew I had a spot up in here that needed to be filled, so I just went ahead and used this stuff. But it takes quite a bit of this. You can put it on super thin, like right here. I could probably paint over that. You can't even feel it. But there's only just a little tiny scrape in there. You probably put 50 or 100 times on more than it's going to cover. But this was sanded pretty good. I'm actually kind of surprised that it took so little. When I go over this again with a DA, you won't hardly see anything, just little tiny marks like this one here, this big old 2-inch square piece. That's probably covering something the size of a BB. Same thing with all of it. Up in here I did build up this a little because I had some stuff in it, but it goes on real thin. Sands real easy. Sand's best with wet or dry, but you can dry sand it. This is really designed for a final coat before paint. Primer surfacer, which is what I got, high build primer, will cover probably 90% of what I've marked here, or what I body filled. The problem is that you try to fill this little spot here with primer, you wind up, you know, filling a whole gun full of primer there. So And you know, my eyesight isn't as good anymore, so if I can see it, you know, without my close-up glasses, or feel it, even though I can't see it, it'll show. So I'm just going to let this dry, go ahead and sand the other side, and then I'll sand this, and while I'm sanding this, or before I sand this, I'll put this putty on the other side. Anyway, we'll see how this turns out. Well, after sanding, it's all I have left. Just about all of this completely gone. A little bit right there. There were some scratches up in here. That stayed. A lot of this was because I had too high a pressure on the primer. I got a little bit left right there. Right around this hinge, it had some gaps, and there was some pretty big gaps up in here. But everything I put on this door, mostly gone. Probably 99% of it got sanded off. Just this here was some pretty heavy scratches. They still got scratches. I can still feel that's a little rough still. Basically, this was really only good for showing me where to sand more. This did get filled up a little through here. I'd put some over here. It's all gone. I've got to finish working on this. But all of that red putty just about disappeared. You can see how little is left of it. It's really only good for final paint, but this at least will tell me where, you know, I need a little more primer or whatever. It's all real smooth, surprisingly, for 80 grit. I did this whole side of the car, and there was only one place that I had to mix up some of that other glazing putty. There was a low right there. Looked like it might still be a little low. But I was pretty impressed, really. Out of the whole car, I haven't finished the trunk yet. I don't know if I will or not. I might knock it down some. But I'd like to shoot this in primer and see what it looks like. Still got some sanding to do in here. You can see all the gray stuff is where I haven't really got to it. Basically this whole trunk section. But I was kind of surprised that, and I sanded this all with a board sander. So it's really amazingly straight. No real dents or curves or anything in it. So board sanding a coat of primer and getting the results where most of the primer is still left, especially for the first coat, is really good. That means that this body is straight almost to the thickness of primer, which is, I don't know what, 5/10 thousandths. So there might be 15-20 thousandths off on this stuff, probably less. So This should give me just a mirror paint job. Painting it in this old dusty dirty shop is gonna be somewhat of a challenge. I'll probably have to blow it all good, blow it out good, maybe wet the floor, keep this dust down. But it's good acrylic enamel, even if it does get a little dirt in it. I can sand it out. I think I'm just going to go ahead and try to finish sand this. I'd like to squirt some primer on it while it's still daylight, but I got quite a bit of sanding to do yet. Maybe I'll just finish up my sanding and paint this tomorrow whenever I can see good. That way I won't have to rush anything. Anyway, looks really good for the first sanded coat. Probably less than 20% of the car went through the primer into metal or into the inner bondo. So it's pretty impressive, because I know what it'll do when it's painted. When it's just straight, you know, Ray Charles could get a good paint job if the body works all straight. So I think that'll be it for today, guys. I'll bring you back tomorrow. We'll get this thing primed again.